Do you ever really think about how you're breathing? You may or may not be into yoga, where breath is truly very important. But what about in your everyday? There is a true mind-body connection when we take the time to be intentional about how we're breathing. And whether you need to calm some anxiety or to get yourself energized, there is a technique to help you. Our guest today has some very practical ways to start you on your very own path to a breath practice. Give it a listen. Health, wellness, career, family, life, and the better side of 50. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Listeners, welcome to Asking for a Friend. Our guest today is my dear friend, Sandy Abrams. She is a longtime entrepreneur who now shares the power of breath work through unique and empowering experiences. She speaks to companies, executive groups, and recently was a speaker on a TEDx talk. Sandy is also the author of the book Breathe to Succeed, which I also have on my bookshelf. Ladies, Sandy and I have known each other for almost 40 years, and it was really difficult going back and doing the math, but we're old college chums, and I'm so delighted to have you here today. Welcome, Sandy.
Thanks, Michelle. What a pleasure. And I cannot get over that number. Close to 40 years.
I know. We don't look that old, do we?
No.
Okay. What I'd like for you to do is share a little bit with the listeners your path, your journey, because this isn't always what you were doing.
In college, when we knew each other, I majored in broadcasting and journalism. I don't know that I really ever used that degree. Shortly after college, I did a few different things. I worked in PR. I was a real estate agent. And then I launched my own business, one of those crazy things. I designed a silly moisturizing glove for the bath and body industry that turned out to be one of those crazy things. It's like 28 years later, it's still alive and well. But I wrote a book called Your Idea Inc. in 2010 to help other people like me who are outside of the business world turn a product idea into a business. And then several years later, I started to notice how much I was burnt out with technology and also so many other people that I knew. And so I decided to write my new book, Breathe to Succeed, which came out in 2019. And it shared my 30 years of tapping into the power of breath for success and well-being and creativity and everything. It had become at the core of who I was. That's the mission that I'm on now and that I will be on for decades to come, because it's now more relevant than even it was in 2019, now that we live on Zoom and our devices are just dictating where our attention goes all the time. So that's my mission now, is just to share the power of breath with everyone so that we can be more human versus always connected to our devices.
Well, and you had told my team a story a year ago. I had you speak to my sales team. And even having done yoga all those years, you hadn't really embraced the breathing part of yoga.
Mm-hmm. It took me a little while. Definitely. I loved the rigorous practice, and I was known as the girl who left yoga class right before Shavasana, the last pose where you lie still for 5 minutes. And I'm just not wired like that. But it became the most important part of my yoga practice, and I took it off the yoga mat and into my life, and that's where the magic begins. And that's why my perspective is different from many yoga teachers and meditation teachers, because I'm all about finding meditation and calm and just a positive mindset in small moments throughout the day.
You had talked about the science behind the power of breath, because there is actual science that backs up your message. You didn't just come up with this. There's some really powerful data behind this.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating. I never really cared to know how it worked. I just knew, wow, this works for me. When I need to feel more calm, I breathe a certain way. When I need to be balanced or boosted, I breathe in different ways. I never looked into the how or the why. But when I got ready to write Breathe to Succeed, my publisher said, you need to include some neuroscience, because otherwise people are just going to think it's woo-woo, yoga, not interested in it. And that's where I became super fascinated with the neuroscience behind it and the power of inhaling through your nose versus the mouth, and what happens in your brain and your mind and your nervous system. We have the power to override our nervous system. I mean, that's like a human superpower that most people really don't realize that they have. For me, the best part of writing that book was understanding all of the neuroscience and now having those sort of aha moments of, oh, that's why that worked. And there is up to the minute science and still more of it coming out daily because people are now finally tapping into the power of the breath.
There was an Instagram post that you put up, and I don't know, it's been months, but it showed a gentleman from Stanford University discussing breathing protocols for patients. Did you ever think it would reach that level where it becomes mainstream in medicine?
I don't know. I never really thought about it, but it is so exciting. And it's Dr. Andrew Huberman. His Instagram is @Huberman Lab. He is one of those people that makes neuroscience accessible for people like me and anyone who's just interested in it. And while he does run the neuroscience lab there, he talks in layman's terms about how to utilize the power, not just breath, so many other biohacks and stuff to help us feel our best, to age well, to perform at our highest level. And it's all fascinating. It was an honor to meet him at the Global Wellness Summit a couple months ago because he's really changed the way that I look at different things, and also talks about the power of nature and sleep and circadian rhythm and just so many different aspects of neuroscience.
I recently sat through an evening Zoom call, and it was with the University of Cincinnati's Department of Integrative Health. And the topic centered around anxiety, but there was a full discussion that went into the importance of breath work and having some kind of a practice for people with anxiety as an addition to their therapy and maybe medications that they're on. Can you talk a little bit about that? Any experience you've had with that, with helping people through anxiety?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very timely right now. With pandemic, there has been a lot of uncertainty and fear, and we've lived in the sympathetic part of our nervous system, the fight or flight, always like looking over our shoulder, like what is next? And living in that fight or flight part of your nervous system is meant to be temporary, but we've all been living in it for 2 years. So it's really important to balance that with what's called the rest and digest, the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, the calming part. And so for people who suffer with anxiety, learning to bring in more breath work that is relaxing. So for example, when you lengthen your exhales, that taps into the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. Like something as simple as making your exhales 1.5 to twice the length of your inhales. You do that for 2 times, 3, 4 cycles of breath, and you have changed your nervous system. You've changed the way that you feel inside, and that really helps with anxiety. And it's a great tool for parents to share with kids too, because even little kids, it helps them understand that they can change the way they feel by changing the way that they breathe. It's so cute to watch. I have a yoga teacher who has a little boy, and he's now 5 or 6, but when he was 3, she would teach him when he was brushing his teeth at night to like let go of the stress, and he would just do a deep breath. And she introduced me as like the breath lady or something, and I would see them at the farmer's market, and he would just come up to me and be like, And it's just, so it's never too young to teach kids that, like, and instead of telling kids or teenagers to calm down, that's like the worst thing we can do for someone who's feeling anxious, is to guide them, to remind them, lengthen your exhales, because they have the power to change the way that they feel from the inside with their thoughts as well as their breath.
You brought up while he was brushing his teeth at night to kind of start the bedtime routine.
Mm-hmm.
And for this age group, sleep can be a huge struggle. And I was curious how a breath practice can be implemented into our nighttime routines. And maybe not just when we wake up at 3:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question, because sleep is a key pillar of well-being. I feel like the way that I slept changed once I had kids. And from then on, I hear every little thing. And so breath has really been a great tool for me to, just like you said, not only to help me go back to sleep in the middle of the night, but as a ritual to unwind at the end of the day. And I think it's really powerful to just have that little ritual, whether it's a bath or whether it's once you get in bed, letting go of the day and breathing and just having a moment of kindness for yourself. Like, you got through a day, you likely helped people in your family or helped colleagues or helped your community in some way, and just reflect for a minute and then let go and look forward to the next day. Breathing tools that balance your nervous system and calm your nervous system are obviously the best ones to do at night. There's a tool called 478, which was developed by Dr. Andrew Weil. So you inhale through your nose to a count of 4. Then you retain the breath for, if you can't hold for 7 in the beginning, you hold for 3 or 4 or 5. And then you slowly exhale to 8. So it has the principle that I just mentioned, where your exhale is twice as long as your inhale. And what retaining the breath does, especially in the middle of the night to help you get back to sleep, is it turns off the worry in your mind, because all of a sudden, while you're retaining the breath, you're actually focusing on the breath at that moment. And it is magical. And sometimes it just takes me 4 or 5 cycles of that to go back to sleep. Another great way to help you go to sleep is doing alternate nostril breathing, which is where you breathe in through one nostril, close that nostril, exhale through the other one, and then you inhale through that side and you exhale on the other side. Really simple, and it balances the left and right sides of the brain, balances your nervous system. You know, simple, like 90 seconds worth of these breath tools, and you can really calm and relax your body for sleep.
You know, the other benefit of this too is that if you have to concentrate on your breathing or holding one nostril and then the other nostril, as I do this as I'm talking, I think it makes you think of something else rather than whatever it is you're obsessing about, which is usually why I can't fall asleep, because I am thinking about, I don't know, this doing this podcast. It's probably what I'm thinking about usually. But I just think everyone I speak with, except maybe 1 or 2, have trouble with the whole sleeping thing. So I did want to talk about that. The other thing is, we think of breath work as a means to center ourselves. We think about, before you have a big meeting or you have to speak in front of a large group of people at some presentation. But how about just for the everyday? Mm-hmm. What do you suggest for people to get started?
It's such a good question, because first of all, I feel like there is sort of this myth out there that breath is just for calming, but it also does balance. And it also, now there's so many tools that are great for boosting your energy, like midday, later in the day. And what's great about these breath tools and breath work in general is that it's customizable. So people can find, there's a huge variety of tools. You find what works for you. Maybe it's just 3 deep breaths. I mean, that's what I started with for so many years before I expanded. And then you do what works for you within the structure of your work and family life. For example, in the morning while you're making your coffee, or if you're standing in line for your coffee, just check in with yourself and ask yourself, think about how you're feeling. What is your stress level or anxiety level? And then think, okay, I could use 3 deep breaths right now. And you do it just while you're waiting in line or brewing your water. And then maybe you make it a routine that when you get in your car, before you make a phone call or turn on your radio, just take 90 seconds to breathe in whatever way your body's asking for at that moment too. I think the best thing is to first become self-aware of, what is my stress level right now? What's my mindset? How's my energy? And once you become more aware of that, then you know how to recalibrate quickly in under 90 seconds with a whole variety of tools that you'll have in your toolkit.
There's the sleeping part, but then what about the energizing one? So it's 3 p.m. You don't really want to have that cup of coffee because you might not be able to sleep.
Yep.
How do we get ourselves energized again?
So just like I was saying in the beginning, with the relaxation is when you lengthen your exhale. So the opposite, the other side of the coin, is where you do short spurts of inhales and exhales that are like little bursts of breath, like breath of fire. And it looks like this. It's like just like that, really simple. And then you just do like a round of 12 of those. And maybe that's enough in the beginning. And then maybe 2 rounds of that or 3 rounds of that. And again, in under a minute. I call it espresso in the form of breath work, because it just like really gives you like the kick, like you had a shot of espresso. And also what really helps is to get out of the chest, the shallow, rapid chest breathing, and start breathing from down in the belly, which is like activating the diaphragm. That is energizing. What is exhausting is just this rapid, shallow chest breathing. And it's a vicious cycle that is exhausting. And you're not getting, like, talk about the science of it, you're not getting like the gas exchange, and you're not optimizing the respiratory system. So the first thing, once you become self-aware of your mindset and your energy, and then you want to recalibrate, remember to like place both hands on your belly and start the inhale down at the belly, and then bring your breath up to your chest, and then exhaling it. And it goes, and it feels so counterintuitive, because I think they say after the age of 5 is when we no longer utilize the belly on the inhales. Like if you think of a baby, when they inhale, the belly comes out.
Oh, yeah.
And then they exhale and the belly goes back towards the spine. Well, we're used to holding in our bellies. We never want to like have it protrude and come out. And so it feels counterintuitive, but you have to train yourself again to like place both hands on your belly and just practice a few rounds, inhaling through your nose, letting your belly come out. And then on the exhale, gently, even using your hands to gently press your belly back towards the spine. And you'll start to notice, if you feel lightheaded, it's because you rarely breathe this way. It takes just a few, then just pause, and in like 10 or 15 seconds, you'll feel fine. But start to retrain your body to utilize your diaphragm and your belly to fill up first and then come up to the chest. Because the shallow breathing, there is science behind it. It actually causes stress in our bodies. That's another reason to just be mindful throughout the day of where you feel your stress sometimes. And also to nip it in the bud at those first signs of, like for me, it's my jaw clenching. Some people get bad headaches, or your shoulders begin to tighten, or your palms are sweaty. Begin to notice those first, the physical manifestations of stress, and then check in with yourself. What are your thoughts? Are you talking negatively to yourself? There's so many different breath tools. Another one for the afternoon that I love is lion's breath. And
I love this one.
Right? It's so fun. So I'll just do one now for listeners. I'll explain it as clearly as I can without them having to see us. But you close your eyes, and then through your nose, you take a long, slow, deep inhale. And on the exhale, you bulge open your eyes, you stick out your tongue, you exhale, and I guarantee it makes you laugh because you feel silly, but it exorcises any negative or stagnant energy that happened during the day. So it is a great afternoon pick-me-up. You do 3 in a row. You can also, as I mentioned before, customize it. Maybe shake out your hands, shake out your body. This is also an incredible one for kids or teenagers or adult children, just to, again, let them know that they can get rid of anxiety, fear, uncertainty. Just let go of negative energy with that simple lion's breath that takes, 5 seconds.
I love how you integrate the whole family into this practice because, so many times our kids, they may have a presentation at school or they have to have a difficult conversation with a friend. How do you prepare them? They have to do it. They have to do it on their own, but, have them do some breathing and help them make this a regular thing to help manage their own stress. Kids have so much anxiety, and this is just a nice way to give them some self-help. And we are all about self-care on Asking for a Friend, this podcast. And this is something so incredibly simple that we don't think about.
So true.
It's really awesome. Any other breath techniques that you can think of that would be helpful for our listeners?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do want to you reminded me that breath, it does level the playing field for wellness because every single person around the globe has access to the power of breath. It's free. It's available 24/7, 365. I talked about in my TEDx talk just briefly about this inner sanctuary that we all have. And the key to unlocking that is just mindful breath, like one slow, nourishing breath to take you inward, to take you into your inner sanctuary. And so I think it's important that people realize that for whatever they need, whatever circumstances or situation that they might face throughout the day, there is a breath for that. Just to start out, like breath 101, I would suggest that people do an inhale through the nose to a count of 5 and an exhale through their nose to a count of 5. And also, in addition to using your belly and your diaphragm, it's really important to focus on 90 some odd % of the time, inhaling and exhaling both through your nose. However, when you're doing breath practice, often I love to exhale through my mouth because it feels to me like a more powerful release of negative energy. But when I'm not doing those 90 seconds here or there of breath work, the reason we inhale through the nose, first of all, is to heat and filter and treat the air that comes into our body. Otherwise, when you inhale through your mouth, germs and bacteria are going directly into your lungs. So it's really important to inhale and exhale through the nose. Getting back to sleep. Sleep apnea comes from snoring a lot, and that happens with the open mouth. Bacteria also grows. And for children now, there is the science behind developing issues with mouth, oral hygiene, and also like the shape of your jaw and your teeth. If you're a parent and your child wakes up frequently exhausted, you need to look and see, are they snoring at night? And then refocus them. You can always retrain the way that you breathe so that you're focused on inhaling and exhaling through your nose as much as possible, because it really does have that overall effects that help us feel our best. It's unbelievable the difference that makes. And also tools, simple things like little tweaks in the breath, like people think that they have to breathe hard and strong to make a difference. And really the opposite is true. It's more about pretend you have a feather under your nose, but starting your breath down at your belly and just slowly inhaling really lightly and then exhaling really slowly. So that 5 second in, 5 to 6 seconds, and 5 to 6 seconds on the exhale, that's a deep breath. That's also called coherent breathing. And I feel like that's the most simple tool for people to start with because it's balancing. And it also helps you realize you can really immediately see the difference from the chest shallow, rapid breathing to that a deep breath there is science behind the power of one deep breath.
I love it. And I told you during COVID, I was also unemployed, and I was doing my everyday walks, but not until I became more conscious of my breathing did I really get that full benefit out of being in nature and being more aware of everything around me. And it helped me so much manage that stress and uncertainty of that time in my life. So thank you for that, because just following you on Instagram opened my eyes. And then, of course, we talked later, and it's really very powerful, Sandy. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I do want to ask you a question, because we were giggling at the beginning about our time that we've known each other. And if you went back almost 40 years, did you ever think you would be where you are today?
I know. No. Absolutely not. I feel like when I look back at those great years of college, thank goodness without social media. Can you imagine if we had social media?
Oh, dear God.
I know. Dear God is right. I made crazy decisions. I was so reactive and impulsive, and no, I would never imagine. And without yoga and breath practice, thankfully I found it in 1989, shortly after we graduated, because I needed that in my life so desperately. And having those tools, that's why I really am an advocate of teaching as young as possible, because now that there is social media and kids are always being filmed somewhere, and I just feel like they need to understand and be able to control their nervous system and emotions and mindset better, because, you know, we're all being filmed everywhere we go. I'm so grateful for the time that we had without social media. I'm so grateful for the journey of the past 40 years. And what's beautiful about looking back is seeing how things align. All the experience I had as an entrepreneur and now with breath, like it goes hand in hand, because work, life, now there, like, is there a balance? I mean, we're all in charge of our lives and creating our opportunities and doing what we can to help ourselves age well and feel our best. And that's really the bottom line about breath, is that it helps you create your best mindset and energy in small moments. I mean, what is more powerful than that? You don't need a prescription. You don't need drugs. You don't need anything. You just need the self-awareness to realize that you have all the power within. There's a quote I love that says, "The mind is the king of the senses, but the breath is the king of the mind," from B.K.S. Iyengar. And I love that.
I love that. Send me that quote, will you?
Sure.
I appreciate that. And speaking of which, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. So my website is called C.E.Om.com. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Sandy Abrams. And I love talking with people on Instagram or Twitter.
Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put your contact information in the show notes, along with your book title and how to get a hold of your book.
Great.
Sandy, this was so great.
Thank you, Michelle. I love it. I love your title, Asking for a Friend, too. It's awesome. So
thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.